one of the most common attacks we get on Christianity, and I'm sure you've heard it, is that Christianity is the white man's religion. But is there any truth to this? Terrible. But can we blame the Fugees for her performance of that song? Can we look at her performance and say, oh, well, the Fugees, that song that they made was no good because we looked at her performance of it? No, we can't judge the Fugees for her performance of their song. This is the same thing with Jesus Christ. You see, Jesus didn't own any slaves. Jesus wasn't a racist. So if someone that is a racist and somebody who owns slaves claims to be a Christian, then they're simply not one. So one of the biggest things we have to understand is that everybody that claims to be a Christian isn't one. And the Bible tells us that many will come in his name and will be false witnesses. There are plenty of false prophets that are still out to this day. So we have to understand this and we have to learn how to use discernment. Now, do you think Martin Luther King was the type of person who was brainwashed or was just following his master? He's somebody that stood up for black rights. And guess what? He was a Christian. And guess what he used to defend the wrongdoing of slavery? What he used to defend it was the word of God. He used the word of the Bible. He used Jesus. Jesus, actually, in one of his first sermons, preached against racism when he told the parable of the Good Samaritan. And he was almost killed for it. So he wasn't a racist, and Jesus never owned slaves. A Christian is somebody who follows Jesus. So if Jesus never owned slaves and a slave owner claims to be him, there's a contradiction there. Christian and slave owner don't match. Those words contradict each other. You can't be a Christian slave owner. You can't be a Christian murderer. If I was to go out and murder somebody, you can't go say, oh, well, now Jesus is no good because that person killed somebody and claimed to be a Christian. So the only way you can call an action a Christian deed is if it's something that Christ would do. Another thing we have to remember is not only do Christians do not believe in slavery, they actually were a big part of slavery being abolished. The Christian abolitionists were actually at the core of the first people that started speaking against slavery. The Bible tells us that we are all created in the image of God. That's every man. It doesn't separate anybody. In the Bible, we also see that that God commands people that are slaves to obey their master. This is a verse that's been taken out of context many times. What you have to understand is you have to put yourself in the context of these times. You see, at this time, the slavery that was going on was a whole different kind of slavery. It wasn't the slavery that we saw here in America. This was a different type of slavery. This was people that were captured after war and were actually in a live-in situation, in a work situation, and it's also a limited time slavery to where these people had a certain amount of years where they would work for who their master was, and afterward they would be released. So, and they had many more rights. The Bible also says things like if you were to beat a slave to where he would lose his tooth or lose his eye, then you were to set him free. So they had many more rights, and this was a whole completely different context of the slavery that we had here in America. So a lot of times we just automatically add our experience of slavery to the Bible's experience, and that takes it out of context. So remember that Christ never had a slave. He never confirmed slavery as a good thing. So we have to always remember to keep the Bible in context, and we have to also remember, don't blindly believe anybody that tells you anything. Because remember, we have an enemy that is trying to blind us to the truth. So that's why it's so common for people to just hear this type of thing and to run with it without doing any kind of research or critical thinking. Something to think about.